Hi there. On what could well be a record-breaking day for heat in the UK, it is the Wednesday's Child podcast again. So, against that backdrop of sweltering and sweating and all those other unavoidable things in this extreme heat, we are here for your listening pleasure. It's Sarah and Debbie again, just going to give you some insights and lived experience about eating disorders, as we always do. And this time we are again delving into the post bag to pick on something that was dropped to us in the last couple of weeks, talking about, can you please talk about this, because it'd be really helpful in my recovery progress. And we really like to do podcast episodes on a theme like that, because it feels like you're listening. We're not just talking to a brick wall. So we welcome those contributions. So if you get to the end of this and say, that was really helpful, but actually next time can you talk about this, please be just like this particular person was, who I'm not going to name, but I hope you know who you are. Just be like her and send us that email that says, talk about this. So before we get onto that, hi, Sarah, how's the heat up there?
I think we're a few degrees below you, but we're still absolutely sweltering. If anyone's watching this on the YouTube channel, you'll tell because I'm dead shiny. Have you seen my face?
I'm really shiny too. I'm really shiny. And I said to someone yesterday, actually, because they said, oh, Debbie, you look like you're glowing. And I said, do you know what? I think was it Sunday? I was outside more than perhaps I'd intended to be, but it wasn't actually brilliant blue sky sunshine here, which is really quite cloudy but warm. And then I woke up the next morning and I thought, oh my God, I look like I've had a brush with a fake tan that's just got a bit excessive. So when, I'd kind of gone to bed one day feeling rather pale and woken up completely different colour. So there we go.
See. Hey, and apparently anyone, if you are listening, I'll be too late. But anyway, the Showcase Cinema are doing free cinema for anyone who's ginger yesterday and today.
Wow.
So I could have got myself a free movie.
Who knew? So is it ever worth dyeing your hair ginger just so you get a free movie?
No, you'd need proof. You'd need all the freckles to go with it. The hair is not just.
I can do the freckles. Do you know what? I'm gonna have to go on Deviate. I was reading an article the other day about, apparently it's a trendy thing to get like freckle tattoos.
Fake freckles. Yeah.
What's that all about?
I know. And for the first time ever in my entire life, I'm fashionable.
Wow. Yeah. I did remember trying to scrub mine off kind of quite a bit as a child, and now I get disappointed if they don't come out as much in the summer when I think they should.
Yeah.
Oh well. Height of fashion, aren't we, Sarah? Height of fashion. But it says both of us sat here in whatever clothes make us just feel slightly cooler on this intense
exactly
day.
And my 95 Primark flip-flops.
Oh, amazing. That's what Primark's for. Okay, never mind. We're clearly not Birkenstock girls, are we?
No, not at all.
Okay, so theme for today. So we had this just brilliant message into the post bag after our last episode, and this person was saying, just give me some help with keeping going, keeping the motivation happening with eating disorder recovery, in particular when you are living with or influenced by people whose way of life is so diet centric, or maybe because they live with you and they fill the fridge with all low fat this, low sugar this, diet this, or they just talk incessantly about, oh, must do this, must go on exercise, must avoid that. And I can see that for somebody who thinks they've already started to make some inroads into recovery, or actually even somebody who just really has every good intention of recovering, being surrounded by that dialogue, but not just the things that people say, but their actions and just the behaviors that are around you all that time, really does make it difficult to shift the mindset, doesn't it? And I can remember in particular coming out of treatment and coming back home and thinking, oh God, now I look in the fridge and I see, and I know we touched on this a bit last time, didn't we, about you and your bullshit milk, and somebody had bought the milk that you didn't like, the skim milk or something because you couldn't get any other or whatever. It is that kind of moment where you look around and think, actually, generally, society has made us feel ashamed to have full fat this, and to have the stuff that actually we know that in recovery is vital for us to get full return to health. So I wondered whether we can explore that and just say, for this particular person, and for all those of you there who I'm sure are going through it, whether you've got flatmates you live with, partners you live with, whether it's your family, your siblings, your parents, what can you say? What should you say? Or do we have to argue? It's your own race. Pull your big girl's pants up and just say, don't say anything, don't do anything, but play your own game. What would you say, Sarah? Is it just about sitting in your own lane?
I think this is one of the hardest parts of a certain point of recovery, to be honest, because up until this point, you've been probably on a meal plan, you've had things quite kind of worked out for you, or you may be, like you said, you might have been in services or under support. So I think this is one of those big shifts where you start to have to learn recovery independently. And I think that's what makes it really challenging to start off with. So I think I would like to say to anyone in this position that it is okay if you're in a complete nut head spin around this at the minute, because this is the real hard graft we're talking about now. I'm not belittling the process up until this point, but when you start to have to be independent with it, that's when, because there's nobody else there.
Yeah.
I suppose I was fortunate, wasn't I? Because I took control of my kitchen because I was the matriarch of my household. I was the head of my own household. So I know I've had some comments in the past by saying, it must have been easier for you, Sarah, because I talk about, how I ditched the bullshit food and I literally just emptied my fridge and I took it to the food bank. And I do see that was potentially easier for me because I had control of my own kitchen. So if you're living with a group of people, like in a flatmate or a house share, or you're still living with parents, I can totally understand how that is a trickier thing to be able to banish altogether, because you're not necessarily the only person in that house, and you're also probably not the person who's in charge of the food. Is it a staying in your own lane? I suppose it is a staying in your own lane, isn't it? Because you've got to be thinking about your own journey and your own priorities. But I often think about it of like, remember when you were entrenched in your illness, Debbie, and like I was, and I remember quite clearly, like everybody else in a room would be saying to me, no, don't go running today, Sarah, it's raining. But I would go running.
Yeah.
Or they'd say, no, Sarah, don't eat that one tiny half a Weetabix, have this, whatever. But I would have my half a Weetabix. It's the exact same mentality, but the other way around. So when everyone else is saying, no, I'm going to have a low fat yogurt, you go and have the high fat one anyway. We used to go against things when we were poorly, and surely it's the same kind of mindset to go against things now we're supposed to be in recovery.
I think you're exactly right. I think the very skill set that some people think that they are deploying by managing to keep their eating disorder fueled, so the stubbornness, the dogged determination, the rigid kind of denial of anything else anything anybody else says, I think all those qualities, traits, whatever you want to call them, are the very things that you then need to deploy to keep on the right path with your recovery. So the stubbornness got you into where you are with your eating disorder behavior, the stubbornness to refuse to accept that actually genuinely you were hungry, and the stubbornness with which you decided you were going to go out running in the rain even when it was inappropriate and you were too poorly to do so. That stubbornness flipped the other way should be deployed in, I'm going to be bloody stubborn here, and I don't care what around me is being eaten or served or put in the fridge. I will buy what is necessary for my welfare and my well-being. And I would hope that for the vast majority of us who have been through treatment, there will be a point at which most of us say, if I look in that rearview mirror, it is so frightening at the prospect of ever returning to that dark, dismal place again. I must do whatever is necessary to make sure that stays behind me and doesn't go, I do not become part of that revolving door process.
The food and the behavior shifting, that's the medicine, isn't it? So if someone could put that in a tablet form or in a UV drip, IV drip even,
it could be a UV drip.
UV drip, and in that drip and in that tablet was like some sort of magic to get rid of the behaviors in your head and some sort of magic to nutritionally rehabilitate you, you would quite happily get up in the morning and take that tablet like you would with any other illness. You would just take it. You would get, the doctors told me I've got to take these 4 times a day, bang, you take them, and lo and behold, you'd be recovered in 6 months, a year, whatever. That's the mindset that I definitely had to get myself into about the food and the behavior remodification, that's the medicine. It's just that we happen to have an illness where that's like tortuously challenging and tortuously hard.
I've said to you before on different episodes that we've done, I genuinely believe that so many people that have had a history of an eating disorder, if you could say to them, take this overnight, wave this wand overnight, and you would wake up recovered from your illness, I genuinely think people would do it. I don't think it's that people so much want to not be well again. It's that that scary journey of going from this horrendous illness that I'm in at the minute, and then watching my body change, watching people react to me, dealing with whether I'm happy with those changes, getting used to a different appearance in the mirror. It's those parts that we have to travel through with this illness that makes it something that we're just not prepared to do. So we sit in this ugly world, stuck in the entrenched illness, even though we could still accept that there's a better world over there. Not only will we look and feel better, but we'll be living a happier life, a more sociable life, we'll have more opportunities, we'll have a stronger, brighter, sustainable future. All those things seem right. It's just the journey in between that people find so difficult. And that includes denying all this narrative that exists in society about diet this and diet that. And it means calling out our behaviours when we want to go for a run at 3 a.m. when it's pouring with rain, or whatever that ludicrous stuff is, and having those arguments not only with others but with ourselves. That's the work that we find so difficult to do. So yes, as you say, replace that with a magic pill. I genuinely believe a huge number of people would just say, I've got it, I'm doing it, because that's my way of having a baby, getting married, getting the job I want, being able to have sex with my wife again, going around the world. All those things happen when we get recovery, but we're frightened of the extent of the journey.
So in practical toolkit things then, because we like to give people a good old toolkit, don't we? So you're at that stage of recovery, and you are finding that the folks around you are talking a lot about diet culture, and your fridge seems to be starting to get full of bullshit food, and it's going against everything that you're trying to do. What's our practical ideas to get people started, to get people over that initial hump?
I think doing what you did was great. So if you have the opportunity to do it, is to do a cupboard sanitizing job. Is basically kind of an overhaul, and just say, this crap that's in my fridge and my cupboard at the minute, the longer it sits there, it's still going to be the thing I retreat to. So all those low fat this, low sugar this, alternatives to that, I think you've got to be really honest with yourself and just look at everything and say, do I actually really like that? No, I'm just doing it because it's part of that diet behavior. As you say, much easier to do when you own your own kitchen, and maybe that you're not sharing the house, or you're certainly the matriarch. I think if you share the house, I would argue it's worth saying, well, actually, I would argue it both ways. You could just go about your own business and say, I'm staying in my own lane, don't even need to have a conversation with anybody else in the house. I am just, whether they're flatmates, whether they're family members, you could just say, if you want to do your bullshit low fat yogurt, you do that, but I'm going to put in the fridge what I need for me. Perhaps we're getting into trickier, more challenging territory when you're a child, or you don't have access to your own money to go and purchase those things. That's where the conversations need to happen. So if you are a young adult living back at home with family, and you genuinely cannot go and shop for yourself, there is no real choice other than to have that conversation that is, I can't subscribe to the same diet methodology that goes on in this household. I want recovery. I'm sure you want recovery for me. The way I need to do that is to have on my shopping list on a regular basis these things, and these are, and I love this word, non-negotiables. We all need the non-negotiables in our recovery, whatever that may be. And I think
What were some of yours? What were some of your non-negotiables? I have a couple.
Oh, go on. Well, what was it, specifically food related or behavior related?
Oh God, if we were going behavior, it would be, this podcast would be very long. Actually, that's maybe a good episode. Actually, the non-negotiables from a behavior point of view, non-negotiables from a food point of view, for me, well, just the basics. The app. If I got the basics right, I used to say to myself, if you can build a sandwich that's non-bullshit, then you've got the basics right. So you like the basic components of food. So I kind of went back to the sort of things that maybe you had when you were little. So my non-negotiables were, it had to be white bread. It had to be white sliced bread, because all of my bullshit had told me that was like the worst devil food. So white bread was an absolute non-negotiable for me. Potatoes were a non-negotiable for me. Tinned soup, I know that sounds really weird, but I would spend ages like boiling up vegetables in order to make that perfect soup. So now just cheap 45p Tesco's own tin soup, that was a non-negotiable. Tins of beans, again, because if you can have a white slice of bread and you can have some butter and you can have a tin of beans, you've got yourself a lunch that takes like minutes. So I made my non-negotiables things that just everybody in their right mind would eat. And I wasn't in my right mind. So I went to the place. So, I kind of went back to what I was eating when I was a lot younger, really, I think.
Yeah, I would say nursery foods became my thing too. And I would say, just like, I mean, you talk about white bread, but for me, it was white goods, kind of, whites of everything. So white bread, white pasta, white crackers, white biscuits, what, whatever it was. And stopping the overthinking that, initially I couldn't do the shopping myself and found that too scary. But then as soon as I was able to do it, it was kind of just reforming my process of never walking down an aisle and spending there was almost like I needed to start the clock of going around the supermarket. I don't know about you, but at a point in kind of real entrenched behavior, I could have spent hours
I used to
just walking up and down the aisles. And if ever you'd had like a tracking device on you, like have you ever seen one of those programs where they track how people use a house and what rooms of the house they use, and they kind of heat map it, and you find that most people spend most of their time in the kitchen or whatever. And I think if someone had ever heat mapped me around the supermarket, the amount of time I would just walk up and down aisles, and you think, how many aisles has an average supermarket got? Like 30. And, there's me going, oh yeah, well, I can buy 4 items from these 2 aisles, and that's it, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So kind of reconditioning myself on those things was really, really important, and keeping to strict times to say, nope, that's your lot. Bang, 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 doing this, then going to get out. Similar to where we've talked about when you go out to eat, or certainly when you were newly out of services, you weren't going to allow for any discussion about, shall I have this, shall I have that, and what if they say I can't have this, and what if they haven't got that. It was, James, bloody order me this, or cheese on toast, kind of
tuna sandwich, come on, baby.
Sorry, tuna sandwich.
I think it's also, if you can take a visit all your bullshit tin goods and what have you to the food bank, and give your frozen food to your next door neighbor or whatever it is, because I know a lot of people don't like waste, and ban the bullshit from the house. If you can't do that, then either stay in your lane and be on it, or speak to people and say, these things here, these things on this shelf in this cupboard are not helping me whatsoever. Please help me get better, please help me get well. And if it's your mum and dad and they're saying, oh yeah, but I like my low fat, you're going to have a frank conversation with them about, well, look, I'm in recovery here. Like, if you keep this stuff in the house and I'm asking you, I'm begging you to help me, there's very few parents out there that wouldn't do that. I'd also have a look at things like that you've got stored on your media box on your TV, or be it Sky or Virgin Media, whatever, because I used to have program after program after program about eating well for less, and you are what you eat, and drop 25 dress sizes in a day.
Do you remember the super size, super skinny one? Was it super size?
Yeah, it was.
That? Oh, that program it was just so wrong in so many ways.
Yeah. But getting rid of anything that was to do with health, fitness, well-being, even your browser history on your internet, and I'm talking about things I don't know here, but when if you put YouTube on, it might come up with exercise workout videos. If you're going to do lots of HIIT workouts at home, get rid of all your cache data, I think it's called.
It's kind of based on your likes, isn't it? And equally your social media. I mean, where did we start on that? But yourself what you've got into the habit of browsing. And this is where I always hit on difficult territory, because I want you to continue to look at Wednesday's Child social media, and I want you to keep listening to the Wednesday's Child podcast. But yourself whether you are incessantly absorbing eating disorder related social media content because it fuels your belief in some kind of misguided way that actually you're getting well by observing that material or listening to these episodes, but actually you've got no desire to do the doing. And you're all welcome here as listeners, but actually the people that we want listening to this are the people that say, I'm taking on board what you say, it resonates with me, and I want to be well. I'd rather have 1,000 less listeners, but no, the ones that are listening are really gleaning what we're saying here and trying to make their lives better, rather than saying, it's okay, Mum, because I listened to that podcast and it tells me all I need to know.
Exactly.
Well, an astrophysicist kind of wannabe can listen to podcasts, but if they're not learning and going to university and doing all the study that's necessary, or it ain't going to happen. So
exactly. I'm going to see Brian Cox in Brighton in a couple of weeks, and that's not going to make me suddenly be able to get a doctorate in physics and go touring the world. I'm just going to watch him.
I don't know. This woman's a determined woman. Just give her a year.
Oh, not astrophysics. I'm learning golf, but that's another story altogether. But I think, actually, as an aside, that's one of the skills that you can get from going through the recovery journey, is that knowing learning what a process is and not getting frustrated when you have to have things done immediately. So I was one of those people that, like, if I couldn't do something immediately, I gave up.
Yeah.
But actually my recovery journey and having these challenging conversations with people about how their behaviours are hindering my recovery, and having really challenging conversations with myself and getting angry with myself, has actually given me and taught me how to play that infinite game, how to take my time, how to know that things are not going to be able to be done immediately. And then I might not be an expert for a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. But if I keep going, at some point, things will start to click, and some point things will start to get stronger. So I'm actually, one of the things I'm thankful for recovery for a lot of things, but one of them is actually that it has taught me about that the process is just as important as the outcome.
Yeah.
And that's super important for recovery, I think.
And I wonder whether some of those things that we're talking about here are almost like your kind of journal mantras type things that it's really helpful to have written down, because I know for me at kind of darker times, it was almost useful before I got out of bed in the morning, put my feet on the carpet, and before I went to bed, kind of having those 10 things that I needed to repeat, even just like without saying them out loud, repeat them in my mind, just to give myself a reason to remember, actually, I'm going straight downstairs and I'm going to make breakfast, or, you know, I'm closing my eyes tonight and I'm proud that I have done this, that, and the other. And little things, you know, that going back to what you just said there, it's things like saying, doesn't have to be perfect. So, you know, I made that sandwich today and it was a bit of a shitty sandwich and it wasn't great, but I still ate it, even though it didn't taste perfect. Whereas 5 years ago, perhaps I would have gone into a cafe, and if they'd made me a sandwich that was anything less than perfect, I'd have said, well, you see, yes, see, they served me that imperfect sandwich and I'm going to waste it. And I think it's those little things like, you know, I'm building forward. I accept that life isn't perfect. I know that this is worth the pain, all those kind of things that just to remind yourself on a daily basis, you've really got to, you've got, I mean, what is it? Is it about 30 days? They say any kind of ritual, habit, routine can kind of shift your life thinking, can't it? It kind of happens quite quickly if you repeat it. And I think the things we say to ourselves and the things we do on a regular basis enable us to achieve anything within reason. So
yeah, I was never a big one for huge targets and goals. I tried that at one point in my recovery, and it just created a crazy relapse. So I just told myself that my habit was to be the kind of person that. So I'm going to be the kind of person that can sit still when it's sunny. I can be the kind of person that doesn't have to go on a 4-mile walk with the dogs. I can sit on a bench and watch them run, and kind of build really little tiny habits by just being the person that.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I suppose for you, there was maybe, you know, have to tell me if you think this did play a part, perhaps also being a mother at the time you were in recovery, perhaps just an extra little motivation to say, I've got a little person as well in my life, you know, watching and witnessing how my recovery is going.
Yeah, and as Amy got older, obviously she was starting to watch and witness things and starting to take them in a bit more. But I've always said, haven't I, that my real recovery started the minute that my therapist convinced me that I was recovering for me. And once I started to recover for me, I started to recover, and then everyone else got the benefits of that. When I was trying to recover for the job, for the lifestyle, for the husband, for the daughter, it wasn't about recovery. It was about, again, something else on the peripherals. So once I was convinced that I was worthy of recovery and I had to do it for me, that's when I got angry, and that's when things changed.
And an angry Sarah is no good Sarah. It's kind of, wow.
No, she's not. She was angry yesterday because she was hot.
Hot and bothered, and hangry,
and hangry. Yeah, hot, bothered, and hangry.
Oh gosh. Well, I hope that's been really helpful, in particular for the person that wrote in and asked us for some kind of tips and motivations on keeping going, but also for others of you that are in that place. And just before we wrap, there's just something that sits really well with this conversation, and it's the question about when somebody says to you, do you think it's ever possible to recover? And, you know, your own perhaps internalized belief, or whatever you might have read someone else say about whether you can fully recover from an eating disorder. I think everything we've just said there goes towards our belief, our genuine belief that recovery is possible. And so I think something that we both feel very strongly about to share with you today is that if you are hearing it, be it from a friend, a frustrated parent, your, kind of loyal but deeply anxious spouse, or from a healthcare professional saying to you, well, ultimately, statistically, it's really difficult to recover. I just want to say to you, it is possible, because there's two people on this podcast who are saying to you, we lead recovered lives. So how could you not believe that to be the case? And I know that's kind of something that you feel really strongly about too, isn't it, Sarah? I mean, you work a lot in the teaching area, and you see young people all the time. And, the analogy that you would say to a child, well, you're never going to get grade C, because it's not possible for a child like you that comes from that state, living in that county, in that town, whatever. So why is that child going to do the homework, put the hard graft in, turn up for lessons? Why are they going to bother? And it's exactly that same way for committing to eating disorder recovery.
Things have to be possible, and the human brain is the one thing that can make anything possible. If just everything that we touch has been someone who's made something possible that was impossible beforehand. And it angers me when people say it's not possible. We're not saying that it's not difficult, and we're not saying that there's not plenty of bumps in the road, and we're not saying that you don't have to really, really graft, because all of those things are true about recovery. But it is possible. And it's also about, for me, it's making it really realistic and valuing the toolkit, because when a bump in the road comes, and we had a conversation in the last podcast, didn't we, about if you've recovered for a period, then suddenly you find yourself slipping again. It could be like 5 years after your initial recovered period. Yeah. It's the strength of your toolkit and then the strength of your internal voice that is going to make it so that you can then get over that bump. Yeah. So recovery is possible, but building your toolkit as you go and storing it in your back pocket, so that the second you go into a kitchen and you suddenly find yourself, you've made a sandwich without butter for the first time in 3 years. It's like, hang on a minute, hang on, that's something's come back there that I've not seen for a while. And then you immediately get your toolkit out. So I think that to me is recovery is possible, and your toolkit's a really important thing to have in your pocket. So when and if conversations in your head do spring back up, you know exactly what to do at the point of need immediately.
Yeah. Well, I hope that served as an extra motivation for any of you that have had that conversation with yourselves, with somebody else, and tell us if somebody has ever kind of tried to have that argument with you and how you've reacted to it. Because have you reacted in the kind of way that we probably would, which is sheer bloody stubbornness to prove somebody wrong?
Mad. I'd have gone absolutely mad, and then got dead stubborn.
Yeah. Right. I'll show you. You see that donut over there? Yeah, absolutely. As ever, I always encourage you to get in touch if you've got ideas for a future episode, or you just want to give us some feedback on this latest one. Please feel free to get in touch. You can send us an email to hello@wednesdayschild.co.uk. Thanks for all those of you that continue to keep getting in touch either about the podcast or our other services. I do know that we're exceptionally busy with our ever-running waiting list for befriending at the minute, and we are doing our very, very best. The summer's going to be really, really tricky trying to match people. As you can imagine, we've got people taking a little bit of a breather off befriending so that they can get a break with their family and friends, and we encourage that because that helps them to stay well and look after themselves during recovery. So I'm sure you respect that, but it does mean our waiting list is a little bit longer. But rest assured, we're still on it, and we're always encouraging to, for you to get in touch and send us a message and let us know that you would like our services at a future date. That's it for now. Enjoy the heat if you can, or just stay cool inside, eat, drink, stay healthy, and just be focused on your recovery. Take care for now. Thanks for listening to the Wednesday's Child podcast.